Hi there, welcome to REVIT 101. This is a series giving the community information about the revitalization process in Regent Park. Today with me I have Heather. Heather, can you tell us more about relocation, because that's what today's show is going to be about.
Thanks, Mark. Yes, today's show is to give people information about the relocation process. So when a certain area of Regent Park is ready for us to build new buildings, oftentimes families will have to move out of the area to accommodate the construction of the new buildings, and then they'll have a chance to move back to the new buildings once they're complete. So I'm going to go over that process today.
Why don't we take more of a look of the overall process of relocation? What should residents who are just getting into the process expect?
So they should expect that they'll be going through a 10-step process. So it's 10 steps from when you're in your old unit and you have to move out to accommodate revitalization to when you come back to your new unit. The first 5 steps are really about moving from your old unit to accommodate revitalization. Some people move directly into new buildings, but a lot of people have to move out to old units elsewhere in Regent Park or outside of the community. So that's the first 5 steps. The second 5 steps, steps 6 through 10, are about coming back to the new buildings.
Can you break down the first 5 steps for us, Heather?
Sure. So step one is when your household, your family will get a notice from Toronto Community Housing that your area is slated for demolition. And in that notice, it'll tell you that you have 5 months in which to move. So, and then we'll help you through that whole moving process. Also in the note, they're going to say, please come. They're going to invite you to a meeting, which is called the random draw selection meeting. And they'll give you a date and time for that meeting. So that's step 1. You'll be given information. Step 2, you attend the random draw selection meeting. So that's a meeting where everybody who's in that phase attends, and their names are basically in a hat and they're pulled out in random order. And that gives families in that phase the order in which their units will be chosen. So people are welcome to come and observe the process. If you're not able to come to the meeting, your name is still in the draw, so you don't have to be worried about that. At the end of the meeting, you'll see what number you got in the random draw. And as you leave, you'll make an appointment to do a one-on-one meeting. So the one-on-one selection meeting is where you'll talk to relocation staff about your moving preferences. And when you're making that appointment, if you need translation services, please ask for them at that time. Also, when you're leaving the meeting, we'll give you an information package. And in that package, you'll see a list of units that suit your family size. So if you're eligible for a 3-bedroom unit, they'll give you a list of all the 3-bedroom units available for you to relocate to. Now I'm on step 3, the one-on-one meeting. So you'll attend the one-on-one meeting, and at that meeting, you'll sit down with relocation staff and you'll go through your preferences. So if it's 3-bedroom units, there might be a list of 30 units, and they'll ask you to rank them in order of your preference. So whatever's your first choice, second choice, all the way down to your 30th choice. So you'll fill out that form with relocation staff, and you'll sign it, and they'll sign it, so that you have a record of what took place in that meeting, and they'll give you a copy. Once they have these tenant preference forms for everybody in your phase, relocation staff will match families with the units that they've chosen. When we have 2 families who want the same unit, the relocation staff will assign it to the family who got the lower number in the random selection. So that's when your random selection number really is important. So it's only when we have more than one family who want the same unit. So once staff has matched everyone with a unit, they'll send out offers to everyone in the phase at the same time. So that's step 4, the offer letter. All families will receive offers of a unit that they have identified on their tenant preference form. And once you receive the offer letter, you have 10 days usually, but it'll be clear on the letter. You have until a certain date to get back to staff with whether you accept that unit or whether you don't want it and you want to go through the process again. So once we get the answer from everyone, say 70 out of 100 families have accepted their units, those families who accept the units move to the next step, which is step 5. In step 5, you sign the tenant relocation agreement and you move into your relocation unit. And the tenant relocation agreement is an important part of the process. It's where Toronto Community Housing confirms its obligations to you, and I think the key one for the community is that you have a right to return to a new unit. So it confirms to you that when the new buildings are ready, we will be contacting you and you'll go through a process to come and select a new unit. So that's for people who got an offer letter that they accepted. For all of those who got an offer letter but didn't like the unit they were assigned to and rejected it, they go through the process again. So they go back to the one-on-one appointment. They have a different list now of units. It may have different units on it for you to choose from. And then they get a second round of offers. They accept it or reject it, go to the signing the relocation agreement and moving, or go through it again. And oftentimes we go through the process 5 or 6 times in order to accommodate all the families that have to move.
So now all the residents are in their new relocation units. Construction starts in Regent Park and the new buildings will be done soon. What can residents expect next?
So once you're in your relocation unit, I think the thing that everyone is anxiously waiting for is notice that a new building is ready and that it's time for them to go through the process of selecting a new unit to come back to. So I guess we'll call that step 6, the second half of the process. So step 6, you get a return letter. You get notification that a new building is ready for your phase. And what we do is the same thing again. We have a random draw selection meeting. We have that by phase. So for example, for the new building that just opened in September of last year, 230 Sackville, we started by doing the random draw selection for the phase 1 tenants who were still waiting to come back. They were put in order, again by random draw, and offered units. Once they've gone through the process of being offered the units and accepting them or not, if we have remaining units, if we have units that are still available, we then go to the next phase of people who are waiting, so 2A, then 2B, and we basically go through all the steps for each sub-phase. So it's offered to each phase based on the sort of time that that phase had to move out of their units to accommodate revitalization. But again, it's the same thing. You go to the random draw selection meeting, you see your name getting pulled out of the hat and put in order. You meet with staff, you make an appointment to meet with staff one-on-one, you request your translation services, you sit down with them at the one-on-one meetings, tell them your preference, and oftentimes you can either visit the new building or we might have floor plans for you to look at of the new units, and that helps you choose. You give them your order of choice, they match the families, they send out the offer letters, and then you sign your lease to move into your new unit.
Awesome. That really shows how everything fits together, but how do the residents know that their rights are going to be protected?
That's a really great question.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. I just wanted everyone to know that this isn't just a promise that I make when I stand up in front of the community or here on this show. It's actually something that Toronto Community Housing is legally required to do. So we have an agreement with the City of Toronto that is associated with the Regent Park revitalization called the Tenant Relocation Assistance and Implementation Plan. I call it the TRAPE. And that actually outlines all the things that Toronto Community Housing is promising to do for its tenants and how we're keeping track of all our tenants who are affected by revitalization and giving them their right to return. So that's all outlined in this legal document that Toronto Community Housing signs with the City of Toronto in order to get permission to do the revitalization in the first place. But there's a second agreement, which I talked about in the steps. The second one is another legal document that's signed between Toronto Community Housing and the family that's moving. So that's the tenant relocation agreement. And in there, it also outlines all the things that I'm going to do, or that Toronto Community Housing is going to support the family through revitalization, and especially that they have a right to return to their new unit.
I know that moving can be a stressful time. What kind of support with moving does Toronto Community Housing offer to its residents?
So we offer moving supports to everyone who has to move for revitalization, both when you have to move out to a relocation unit and when you're moving from your relocation unit back to your new unit. So we do several things for the families. We hire and pay for a moving company. We arrange for insurance for major furniture items. We provide moving supplies and packing materials for the family. We'll help with the packing and provide help for the packing if you are elderly, if you have a disability, or you're pregnant, or for some other reason are unable to pack. And then we'll also cover the cost of disconnecting and reconnecting your cable, internet, hydro, and all those things that you normally have to do when you move, as well as we'll pay for the forwarding of your mail for 6 months with Canada Post, your regular mail.
Okay, I know there are a lot of questions surrounding the process, and I got a few here that I hear a lot in the community. I'd like to give you a chance to answer some of them, if that's cool?
Sure.
Okay. What are these rumors about not getting a chance to return after?
Okay, yeah, I don't know where those rumors come from, but I just wanted everyone to know that if your family has had to move to accommodate revitalization, you've received a demolition notice, then you do have the right to return to a new unit. In earlier phases, in phase 1, we built some new buildings outside of the Regent Park footprint, and those were considered replacement units. So they were elsewhere in the downtown east. We have one on Adelaide near Parliament, one at Richmond near Yonge Street, and one on Carlton Street. Yeah. So when people moved into those new buildings, those were considered Regent Park replacement. Okay. So if they moved into those new units, it was considered that they exercised their right to return. So that might be one instance where someone said they didn't have a chance to return to Regent Park. They did get a new unit, but it was in downtown east, but not on the Regent Park footprint. So that might be some of where that rumor comes from.
Okay. Another question, why can't I just stay in Regent Park or somewhere nearby?
So as much as possible, we try to have people stay in Regent Park or somewhere in the downtown east, but it's really about what units do we have vacant at the time that you have to move. So in the lead up to knowing that a certain area has to move, we collect vacant units and keep them vacant, holding them for families who need, but we often don't have enough in Regent Park proper or in the downtown east, and so people have to look at units further outside of the neighborhood.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another question is, why are we still moving out of Regent Park when it's ready in phase 3?
That's a great question. So yeah, people ask me a lot, how come we're not in front? How come we don't have new units ready for people to move straight in at this phase 3 of the revitalization? And I could just say it has to do with planning. We're not out in front of it yet. I think phase 3 is probably the more difficult phase to move out because we don't have enough new units yet, but we don't have enough existing units to have vacancies for people to stay in Regent Park. And that's just a fact of phase 3, but we hope that we'll get out in front of it soon so that in later phases, people will be more and more moving directly into new units.
Another question is, how many people are waiting? How long will I be out before I can return?
So right now we have 126 families still from phase 1 and phase 2 who are waiting to come back to new units. Some of those families might have been offered units earlier to some of the new buildings, but they chose to defer. They chose to not take that unit at that time. So they're still waiting, but in some cases, we haven't built quite enough 4 bedrooms or 5 bedrooms yet, so they haven't even been offered a unit yet, and they're still waiting. So generally speaking, people should be out for 2 to 3 years, but everyone can find someone who's been out of Regent Park for a lot longer than that. we're trying to shorten our timelines going forward.
Okay. And just out of curiosity, is there any specific like special priority list involved?
So we get asked that a lot, like how can you get priority within relocation if you have a medical need or, but actual fact, we keep the relocation process pretty simple. We really move people according to that random draw number. We just feel that it's the most fair, transparent way for the community, so no one can see anyone else moving above them in the random draw for any medical or any need like that. But if you do have a medical need that requires you to stay in Regent Park, we have another process for that you apply to through our transfer process. But through relocation, we don't give any one family priority or over another, and that just keeps it simple and fair to everyone.
Unfortunately, that is all the time we have today. I want to thank you, Heather, for talking to us about the relocation process.
Thanks, Mark.
If people have more questions, is there any place where they can get more information?
Yes, we do have a revitalization center in Regent Park. It's at 61 Cole Street. It's open from 9 to 5, so you can just drop in at any time to ask your questions. And you can also call them. Their phone number is 981-4520.
All right, thank you, Heather.